Good evening. There is energy in the room. Okay, and a little anxiety up front. Relax, take a deep breath. It's good to have everybody here. Welcome. Faculty, staff, students, guests in the room, our judges, who I know will be introduced in a little bit, our communications faculty, Dr. Weimer, Dr. Grace Fala, Dr. Sarah Worley, Dr. Michelle Baker, Dr. Lynn Cockett, thank you for all of your preparation and leadership leading us to tonight. This is always a great evening and a wonderful, inspiring event. I have come to love this event since the first time I saw it in the spring of 2013, and it's our oldest academic tradition here at Juniata. For more of the history, I believe in the program, there's a little bit more about how it was founded and the prizes, etc. So if you're interested in that, take a look at that. I, of course, want to congratulate our finalists that are right before me, but I also want to say thank you to all of the other students. I think there were 35 of them, if I have that correctly, who participated in the preliminaries, who put themselves out there, who took time to write the speech and deliver that a few weeks ago. Thank you for doing that and participating in this year's Baileys. I also, as I look at the camera in front of me, I want to say hello to everybody out there in streaming land. It's great to have all of you with us from around the world and from around the United States. So tonight, our contestants will be addressing this question. At the heart of the liberal arts is civic engagement. How can we use the values of our liberal arts education to heal divides in our nation and world? That is the question. And when I heard this question, to get some amount of perspective for this evening, to think about that question in some greater detail, I opened my second drawer in my desk, in my office in Founders Hall. The second drawer. Everybody has a second drawer. It's that drawer that has special photos. It's that drawer that has those really meaningful thank you notes that you may have received from somebody. Mine has poignant notes from students that have crossed my path and my path crossed theirs. I keep memorable quotes that I come across. And that's where the aha moment happened for me as I was thinking about tonight's question. So after a minute or so shuffling through that second drawer, I came across this. And yes, it is an old Chinese proverb I must have cut out. It was about this big. And I quote, "When the winds of change blow, some build walls and others build windmills." Suffice it to say, our country, our world, has been challenged by change recently, and I am so proud that from Juniata's earliest beginnings, the Juniata community has desired to build windmills rather than walls. We have chosen peace. We have chosen empathy, inclusiveness, civic engagement, and intellectual discourse, all attributes that we celebrate tonight with and among one another. And we do it in the Juniata flair, with humility, compassion, and kindness toward one another. I have no doubt that we are about to witness some of that tonight. I now turn the program over to Dr. Donna Weimer, Chair, Communication and Theater Arts, and Thornbury, Professor of Communication. She will introduce our judges for this evening's contest. Dr. Weimer.
Good evening. We are living in an overwhelming world. Tonight alone is Mardi Gras. President Trump is addressing Congress, and Google and the rest of the world are celebrating Abdul Sattar Edhi, a humanitarian who founded the world's largest volunteer ambulance network in Pakistan. In these tumultuous times, it is good to pause, reflect, and listen as 7 Juniatians take on this world. So thank you all for joining us. Professors Baker, Cockett, Fala, and Worley and I are so pleased to have you share our passion and enjoyment in public speaking. A special welcome to all those families, alums, and friends live streaming this Bailey. I would like to salute the 36 students who participated in the preliminary round and argued for healing the divides of our nation and world. As former President Barack Obama entreated, change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change we seek. We had speeches on Saturday on listening, building community through empathy, becoming liberators of truth, mitigating the suffering of refugees, and improving health care for all. Mindfulness was the axis on which all these speeches turned. I wish you could have heard them. Each speech represents why Juniata is vital. The preliminary judges, all communication alums, made the Saturday event an academic challenge. Colton Hallebuck, class of 15, Brea Neri, class of 15, Haley Schneider, class of 15, and Emil Shellistoff, class of 13. These alums totaled 30 hours of volunteer service in one day. They traveled from afar and spent a precious Saturday to give back to Juniata, evaluate speeches, choose finalists, and write critiques to help our Juniata students benefit whether they placed as finalists or not. We simply have the best alums and friends. Please help me thank them for sharing their dedication to the art and craft of public speaking. They did hear that. They're all live streaming. I would be remiss if I didn't thank some folks. Jesse Sullivan and Chris Howell for arranging this theater space into an agora for eloquence. The digital media studio, particularly Luke Forgello and Doug Smith, as well as the band of stalwart digital technicians for coordinating the video and live streaming online. Kyle Bargo and Adam Steele helped to make one of the oldest academic events at Juniata High Tech. We thank the Communication and Media Club for their sponsorship of the refreshments you will have in the lobby while the judges deliberate. And I must thank Heather Bumbarger for her support and hours of invisible labor that make this event possible and Juniata College shine. It takes a village to run the Bailey. So thanks for the coordination and effort, and welcome to everyone tuning in out there in the ether. By the way, I'd like you to turn off your phones during the event. I know this is hard. Just try. Tonight, we have 3 distinguished judges faced with the difficult challenge of choosing 3 winners. In each of their professions, speaking effectively is crucial to success, and in their own communities, they strive to make them more just. The competition is rigorous in the communication program, and I speak for all my faculty. We are so glad we're not the judges. Oh my God. So very briefly, Catherine E. Crew, if you could just stand for a moment. Class of 98. She is the Chief Financial Officer at Union Community Bank in Mount Joy, where she manages the finance and operations of the bank. She was recently named to the Federal Home Loan Bank's Member Advisory Board, and she resides in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. She is still grateful, by the way, to Professor Weaver. All those accounting classes. Dr. Michael Olafsky is an award-winning scholar and instructor who brings an extensive background of teaching and research and service to his position in the College of Communications at Penn State. His scholarly interests are centered on global music, cultural industries, music as pedagogy, and post-communist cultural studies, right? He has taught at the university level in both the U.S. and Europe since 1996. Next year, he will be at Masaryk University in the Czech Republic and heads the Checkmates Fulbright program, which our students are encouraged to apply to. Thank you very much for joining us. Dr. Patrick Konitzer, a different kind of doctor, class of '87, is an anesthesiologist and current medical director of anesthesia at Geisinger in the Shamokin area community. He was also medical director in Ashland, Pennsylvania, in the Wadley Region Medical Center. Dr. Konitzer is very special in our hearts. 30 years ago, on March 30th, he took first place in the Bailey Oratorical Contest. He answered the prompt, Visions and Values, my role in the community. So, Juniata's pretty consistent, I have to say. He exemplifies what we all hope for in our Bailey contestants. Okay, so I would like to read the finalists because you don't know what order they're going in, and I think this might help, okay? Claire Delaval will be first. Anha will be second. Victoria Wolf will be third. Nith Chakti will be fourth. Anne-Marcel Kwame will be fifth. Xavier Cachon will be sixth. And Maeve Gannon will be seventh. Many ask us what criteria the judges use. In brief, the speeches are persuasive in intent. In 6 to 8 minutes, these finalists will invite you to share their point of view. Their residual message must be clear, and they must support it with organization, a clear line of reasoning, and evidence. In addition, they must adapt their message to this particular audience, engage us emotionally, enhance their message with effective delivery. So in other words, walk on water. Tacitus says that eloquence burns bright and will be illuminated. So let's not wait a minute longer. Best wishes to all of the finalists. May Hermes, the god and protector of ancient oratory, guide you to eloquence.
Claire Delaval. I love my life. This semester, I'm taking all politics and economics courses, like human rights and international political economy. Once I'm finished with my day on campus, I head down to the fire station next to Johnny's, Huntingdon Regional District 5. 3 nights a week, I have to be there by 6 o'clock to do my fire classes. 4 hours of classroom or practical skills, all about how to lay fire hose in the bed of a truck so that you can pull it out quickly and smoothly, how to rescue a person from a vehicle, how to fight fire in its various forms. Being a volunteer firefighter is just as important to me as being a student of the liberal arts at Juniata College. But sometimes I feel like in my daily life, I have to cross a divide between these two spaces I care about. And I'm sure I'm not the only person here who's experienced that, the feeling of belonging to multiple places that are somehow divided. And on a societal level, it's clear that we're struggling with how to live in a divided America. Hillbilly Elegy, the memoir by J.D. Vance, was chosen by the New York Times as one of the 6 books to help understand Trump's win. For me, living in both these worlds has been a test of my values. I've learned that the values of one person's reality will not always be a roadmap to understanding another person's reality. I've had to suspend my reflex for quick judgment, practice open-mindedness, and most of all, I've had to question my assumptions. Let's confront the assumptions in tonight's question. How can we use the values of our liberal arts education to heal divides in our nation and world. I think we cannot put our liberal arts education to real use if we don't start by seeing and second-guessing our assumptions. Historically, and even in the writing of this prompt, the liberal arts seem arrogant. Are we assuming too much? Until we confront our assumptions, examine each, and decide whether or not it can stand, we are not ready to engage in civic action. First, let's examine the assumption that everyone wants these divides to be healed. There are clear divides between the fire station as it exists in the community and our college up on the hill. But since I started at the station, I have created new divides in the firehouse itself by my presence. I'm the only one of us not from Pennsylvania. I'm the only woman. Not long after I started, the guys found out I was a politics student. I knew I was the only one with my political views, but I value honesty, and so I was honest. We had arguments about Benghazi and the emails and conspiracy theories. I told them I thought there was no way Trump would win. I heard a lot about that afterwards. Despite all of our differences, the guys have let me in, and we all get along. But we are firmly divided along political lines. We talk about politics in the station, but none of us is going to heal this divide, and it seems no one really wants it to be healed, because we would each rather coexist with this divide than change our political beliefs. I find some of their views morally outrageous. They think I'm an out-of-touch lefty, and sometimes I wonder if I am. In electing Donald Trump, our country and our friends chose the candidate campaigning against intellectual elitism, against unity, and indirectly, against the values of the liberal arts. The changes people have experienced in the United States and the world have been a long time coming. But the nationalism, racism, and separatism that define the world's current divisions have been, in part, reactions against the ideas that the liberal arts values, and against the condescending assumption of liberal elites that they know best. For us to assume that divides must be healed before different people can coexist is a critical mistake. If we demand that these divides be healed before we engage with people different from ourselves, we are walling ourselves in. We've examined the first assumption of the question, that everyone wants the world's divides to be healed, and it is up to each of us to decide whether or not that assumption can stand. The second assumption of the question is that we are owed a special ascendancy because we are students of the liberal arts. How can we, distinguished from others by our prestigious education, which we are lucky or talented or rich enough to receive, use our values to alleviate the disunion? It is dangerous to assume that if only we find the right strategy, stringing together the right parts of what we have been taught, we will be what is needed. If we allow this particular assumption to stand, we fail to live up to our liberal arts values by failing to face the world's discrimination, exclusion, and inequality of opportunity. In the words of Bell Hooks, an academic and activist whose life's work has been to challenge assumptions, if we want a beloved community, we must stand for justice, have recognition for difference without attaching difference to privilege. We students are in this room because somewhere along the way, we were privileged enough to attain an expensive liberal arts college education. When we graduate, our experiences here, in our classrooms, in our labs, on the sports fields, these will have shaped our educations, and they will set us apart. We will be different from the 68% of Americans who did not have a bachelor's degree in the 2014 census. Our educations may allow us to do things other people cannot do, but we must not ever forget that the differences between people, whether it is the degrees we have, the colors of our skin, or the bathrooms we wish to use, do not make us better than others. The third assumption in the question is that we are the only people with liberal arts values. Our fire station is full of misogyny, but at the same time, the guys are committed to making sure that I succeed as a firefighter. They encourage me to take leadership roles. Last year, when I told our chief that I was applying for a Forest Service training program in California to get certified in training in fighting wildfires, he did everything he could to help me train for the fitness test. The crew I trained with in California made the news, and for a few weeks, Chief kept forwarding videos he found online of me in California, because he was proud of me. The guys encouraged me to be the best firefighter I can, not because they read bell hooks, or even because they spend their free time thinking about workplace discrimination, but simply because they believe a woman can do the same physical job as them just as well. They believe this even though they make rape jokes in my presence. The complicated thing about values is that other people can share your values without sharing all of them. Other people can share some of your values while also having values that are completely antithetical to other things that you value. People do not have to be us to be good people. People with liberal arts degrees are not the only people with good and useful values. Civic engagement is indeed at the heart of the liberal arts. From its beginning in late classical and Hellenistic Greece, the liberal arts education was formed around subjects considered obligatory for a free person who would participate in civic life. I argue that before engaging in civic action, we must challenge our own assumptions, and that this is best done by getting an outside view of our world. If divides are going to be healed, anyone can lead the way. Let us be open-minded. Our liberal arts do not mean us to heal the world, but they may be our best tool in civic action. Let us remember what we have been taught. We can take note of opposing views without compromising our own values. We can listen to what others think without forgetting or abandoning what we think. We will not necessarily be the people who heal our divided nation and world. Let us have faith and remember that our values are strongest when tested by the challenge of reckoning with our assumptions.
Anha. Wait, just wait a minute. She speaks English? My now best friend told me that this is what went through her mind when I first introduced myself to her. She assumed that I did not speak English because I do not look stereotypically American. That assumption almost cost her one of the coolest people in her life. So after that awkward start, how did we become best friends? The most beautiful values of the liberal arts education is its ability to nurture curiosity. Liberal arts students take a wide variety of courses that expose them to a broader base of knowledge with different views. From practicing the value of this education, my friend and I learned to jump out of our comfort zones and to ask a lot of questions, a lot of good, difficult, and brave questions. Without questioning the background of one another, we would not be united, but divided. Tonight, I am here to argue that our differences don't divide us, it is our assumptions that divide us. Within a liberal arts education, we are encouraged to challenge our assumptions by asking many questions. Not just any type of question, but more importantly, these three powerful types of questions: curious, critical, and courageous questions. The biggest discoveries humans have made were inspired by curiosity. Newton was so curious about why an apple fell on his head that he theorized gravity. A 2013 survey of mothers in the UK revealed that children can ask an average of 300 questions a day. Humanity is born to be curious and is always thirsty for answers. Asking questions, especially curious and intensive questions, helps us to understand not only our personal view, but also many other sides of the story. Juniata students can't forget the most memorable icebreaker at the beginning of our freshman year, Inbound. Once I thought Inbound was a kindergarten for adults. Then I realized that Inbound was the beginning of my liberal arts journey. Although strangers, we ask intensive questions motivated by curiosity, such as where you from, why you here, what is your background, what are your beliefs? We did this to recognize our differences and similarities and to realize how big and diverse our world is. Though it all starts with curiosity, it doesn't just end with curiosity, but grows into critical thought. From recognizing our differences, we can use critical questions to challenge and accept, but not ignore our differences. We don't ask just for the sake of asking. We ask with purpose. My grumpy professor, Dr. Nangas, once asked me, "What are you Vietnamese people doing here? You are supposed to hate us." I grew up in a military family in a communist country, Vietnam, and my grandfather fought in the Vietnam War against the U.S. Army. When I first came to America, alone, I was very scared. I was afraid that no one would talk to me, that everyone would hate me because of the bloody trauma of the Vietnam War. However, my fear soon disappeared because Nangas would not stop asking questions. This winter, I had the opportunity to take him and 17 students to Vietnam so they could ask even more questions about me and my country. I remember exactly one of the questions a student in the group had from my grandpa. "How can I reconcile what my country has done to yours?" They asked not only in a curious, but also in a critical way. They didn't want to stereotype me or separate me from the group, but wanted to recognize and understand me. And that is one of the most meaningful experiences of my life. Curious and critical questions are important, but the final transformative layer of questioning is the courageous question, which encourages us to cherish instead of fear our differences. These are the questions we must ask ourselves. America is a united nation, not a divided nation, because America is the home of the brave. Brave people ask courageous questions. We tend to forget to question ourselves and our own beliefs as we mistakenly think that they are just obvious. My grandpa witnessed many of his friends dying in battles from American bombs. Since I was small, I have heard him screaming in his sleep at night from flashbacks of the war. But that same man once told me that the best way to reconcile is to reconcile with yourself, to ask yourself questions with empathy. He said, "The past I shared with America is not your past, but the present you share with America is our future of unity." That man is the reason why I came to the US to study and to ask. Courageous questions require self-reflection and empathy. It is how we critically evaluate society's differences and our own individual values. After this year's elections, the Spurs basketball coach, Greg Popovich, said, "I'm a rich white guy, and I'm sick to my stomach thinking about it. I can't imagine being a Muslim right now, or a woman, or an African American, a Hispanic, a handicapped person. How disenfranchised they might feel." He did it. He questioned his own identity with courage to empathize with people who aren't like him. And this is an example of how courageous questions are the key component to open someone's mind, and they open their heart to break the divide in our society. Tonight I proved that I do speak English. And guess what? The person who assumed that I didn't speak English and the one who asked my grandpa how can she reconcile what America has done to Vietnam are the same person. The one who didn't mistake vulnerability for weakness and turn her assumptions into curious, critical, and courageous questions is the one I'm now so proud to call my very best friend. Voltaire, the French philosopher, once said, "Judge a man by his questions rather than by his answers." Tonight, I argued for the power of question. Juniata's heart of civic engagement has brought so many people into my life that I could never say thank you enough. It has helped me meet many strangers across this nation and around the world who love to ask questions. Questions transform us from strangers and from different groups into friends and family. No matter where I go, the liberal arts values will always be with me. They remind me in any action I make that the enemy that divides us is our assumptions, not our differences. And the only way to challenge assumptions is to ask with curious, critical, and courageous spirit to climb over any wall that separates us from all the cool people we love, or more importantly, separates us from the cool strangers we could love.
Victoria Wolf. How do you measure space? Feet, miles, kilometers, acres? What happens when spaces become more complicated, like outer space? Well, that space is intertwined with the idea of time. That's why it's measured in light years. What if we want to look at the simplest of spaces, like the space of Juniata College, or my hometown of Calvert County, Maryland? Time plays a role in these spaces too. In To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee says that as Scout's best friend grows up, he won't cry about the hell that white people give colored folks without even stopping to think that they're people too. Lee explains that we become hardened to the evils of the world with time, but I argue that the most important variable affecting how we act is space. Space determines how transparent we are, not like the clarity of a glass, but how we choose to communicate and display our authentic selves. We can choose to be transparent or to pass quietly through a space without displaying our genuine identities. To begin, we need to recognize that prejudice is a product of certain spaces, and these spaces will continuously breed prejudice unless there is some sort of intervention. Prejudice is rooted in these spaces because there is a lack of contact and conversation with diverse individuals. Liberal arts institutions provide complex spaces for that contact and conversation. With diverse individuals, we learn to speak and to be heard, to be transparent and authentic in our differences. We then need to carry these conversations back to areas where prejudice reigns if we hope to create a more accepting and diverse world. Prejudice persists because it is learned in surrounding spaces. People are not born with prejudice. Rather, they learn to be. Psychologist Gordon Allport argues that children pick up prejudice from their family and culture. It is something that is nurtured at an early age from the influences of shared spaces. This can be dangerous in areas that lack diversity, like our own Huntingdon County. In 2015, the US Census estimated that Huntingdon was 93% white. In areas like ours, the people we need to challenge these prejudices are absent, so prejudice blooms, even if it is not intended. And we encounter areas like this all throughout our lives. When I go home, I enter a space that is similar to Huntingdon, one that Harper Lee warned Scout about earlier, a space of unintended ignorance. When you cross the border into my hometown of Calvert County, Maryland, there is a giant sign in the middle of the highway that preaches, "God bless y'all real good." Between my house and my high school, there are 7 churches, and one of them, after the Supreme Court rejected the Defense of Marriage Act, posted a sign that said, "Just because it's legal doesn't mean it's not a sin." When I am home, I have to sit across from my parents at the dinner table who have become comfortable in this insular world, one without the flourish of a sexual revolution. But if we live in these sorts of spaces, we are not destined to be prejudiced. Prejudice is rooted because there is a lack of contact and conversation with diverse individuals. We can prune prejudice that has developed over time by crossing spatial boundaries. Psychologist Gordon Allport's contact hypothesis states that working together with people of minority groups has been proven to reduce prejudice. These positive interactions are harvested through activities like teammates playing together to win a game or classmates collaborating on a project. These minorities can be from any group: people of color, worshipers of various faiths, or queer individuals like myself. But these boundaries of space don't have to be physically crossed for change to occur. Prejudice can also be reduced when people see interactions between majority and minority individuals, or hear about them, or even imagine them. Psychologists Pettigrew and Trupp define this as indirect contact. So opinions can be altered by just telling genuine stories about unique individuals. If we don't physically or verbally cross this threshold of space, then prejudice won't be challenged. We need courage to cross these boundaries, whether it is the courage to be transparent in our identity as marginalized individuals, or to be transparent in our conversations as advocates with the privilege of passing. Transparent and productive conversations can transform prejudice, whether the spaces we are in are comfortable or not. We start those conversations here at liberal arts institutions like Juniata College. Our liberal arts institution is unique because the formal learning environment is not isolated to the classroom. Instead, it is intertwined with the space of our daily lives. We have group meetings emphasizing more progressive, active learning engagement. Look at our true living and learning spaces like the Global Village. Even areas like our dining hall and library become spaces that enrich intelligent exchange and discussion. Our students are diverse from over 38 countries, and nearly half of us have studied abroad. We are in contact and conversation with each other in these combined spaces. Juniata has shaped how we think about the people around us. Directly and indirectly, being here has made us more accepting of diversity, even if we aren't aware of it. The conversations that we have in these combined spaces of living and learning can be stepping stones to the more difficult ones that we need to continue in less tolerant areas. I chose to speak in my hometown, to be transparent as a minority when I have the comfortable privilege of passing as a straight white woman. It started with having simple talks with my parents, challenging my dad's varying creative phrasing of dyke, but eventually turning into dinner table discussions about why we need to recognize that Black lives matter when we already see that blue ones do. The space they live in allowed them to make these comments without repercussion, at least until their gay daughter makes a scene at dinner and invites these prejudices to wither away. Even though uprooting prejudice is hard for us planted in less diverse areas, and hard for us blossoming in colorful spaces, the contact hypothesis works. But let's not forget that the indirect contact hypothesis proves that anyone can play a role in effective conversation. The responsibility of breaking into these unfamiliar spaces doesn't just rest with minorities. It lies with all of us. When those who have the privilege of passing move into these uncomfortable spaces, we must function as advocates for marginalized individuals. We can speak. Our words can paint pictures of friends, classmates, coworkers, and celebrate difference. By telling these stories of real, true human people, we are utilizing this theory of indirect contact and reaching into the hearts of those around us. This transparency, this ability to speak in spaces that don't feel like ours, is a mechanism that will harvest change and uproot prejudice. And we are learning and practicing this here at Juniata. Malcolm X argues, America preaches integrations and practices segregations. If we don't advocate outside the walls of this college, then we contribute to the divides present in society. Whether the spaces we are in are comfortable or not, we need to be fearless in the face of difficult conversation, to bloom into transparent figures, advocates, storytellers.
Nitya Chagde. Am I your family? Think about it. Think about this question long and hard in the next 8 minutes as I attempt to persuade you into believing in what I believe in. Am I your family? Your immediate reaction is probably, no. After all, we didn't grow up together. We didn't have the same household, and we don't share any memories together. If you were really thinking about it, you'd say that I don't have the same skin color as you. My accent is different. My mannerisms are not like yours. I am, in your eyes, a foreigner, a member of the other. Now think a little harder. I'm not your family as we already established, and I'm not from your culture either. Yet I'm here speaking to you. How do you know it's safe to be in the same room with me? What do you even know about me that you think it's safe? If in this moment you started to create a list of reasons why it's safe, she's just a young girl. She's an Indian, so she's probably a Hindu. She doesn't have a bomb strapped to her chest. Then, brothers and sisters, we have something to talk about. Because if you just made that list, then you just acknowledge fear. You're afraid that there are people out there on the other side of the ocean who can hurt you. They may not be me, but they exist, and that is xenophobia. See, xenophobia hurts people, creating irreparable divides which are fostered solely by ignorance. But they can be mended by a liberal arts education. We came to Juniata College thinking that we were going to be handed answers, but that's not what a liberal arts education does. Instead, it makes us realize that we actually don't know what we thought we knew by challenging our perceptions of the world. So it makes us curious, and curiosity is the key. I argue that the way to eliminate xenophobia caused by a lack of understanding is to be curious. So let me ask you this. What's xenophobia? Well, literally, it comes from the Greek for xenos, meaning stranger, and phobos, meaning fear. And this irrational fear of strangers doesn't exist in a vacuum. It hurts people. And the tendency to lash out against strangers is the reason why I'm ashamed. I'm embarrassed of where I'm from. I'm embarrassed of my cultural identity. Here, I no longer share the food that I bring from home because I'm embarrassed when my friends think that it looks funny. Here, I pack on powder on my face every morning because I wasn't born pale enough to fit in, because my skin color isn't the same as yours. Here, I usually don't wear Indian clothing because I'm afraid that if I do, a black truck with a Confederate flag will go screeching down Moore Street, singling me out for being different, singling me out for being new. And here, I'm called Nits. Every semester, I leave my name behind at home, Nitya, meaning eternal, never-ending. What a joke. No one can pronounce it. Why are we expecting people to stop being themselves just because we're afraid of them? The less we know about people, the more we fear them. And the more we fear them, the more we hurt them. Surrounded by oceans, we know so little about the 7 billion other people we share this boat with. But I'm guilty of this too. I've been uninformed before. You see, 4 years ago, I went on a walk with my mom, and I came across the only synagogue in all of New Delhi, India. It was 5 minutes away from my home, and yet I'd never even heard of it. It's really surprising now that I think about it, because New Delhi is a vibrant city, positively bursting with cultures, and to think that I'd never even heard of Judaism. Of New Delhi's 20 million residents, only 40 people, can you imagine, identify as Jewish? I was so excited. From that moment on, I was so curious that I made it my life's mission to raise awareness about the Jewish heritage in India. So I organized a heritage walk, the first of its kind in the country, and introduced dozens and dozens of people to the synagogue. I believe that stories can alleviate this lack of understanding. As Melissa Fleming, the head of communications at the United Nations Refugee Agency, once said, "My job is to make people care about the 60 million displaced people in the world. I wish I could tell every single one of their stories, because if people knew their stories, I don't think there would be so many walls." See, that's the key to civic engagement. It's not about large-scale social activism. It's about curiosity.
It's about challenging the world as liberal arts teaches us to do. And it's not as impossible as it sounds. I've seen the community around me be curious before. It all goes back to when I was a freshman, sitting alone on the floor of my room on the night of Diwali, the Hindu festival of lights, feeling gut-wrenchingly lonely. Juniata's Hindu population was negligible, so there were no lights or streamers or exchange of gifts. There was no dancing or music or laughter in the air. I was alone. Never again, I thought to myself. So I set aside my fear of sharing Indian food, wearing Indian clothing, and next October, I organized the first Diwali celebration on campus. I didn't even in my wildest imagination expect the overwhelming response that I got. Ellis Ballroom was packed. Over 80 people showed up. It was so unexpected that we actually ran out of food and space. I couldn't have organized such a huge event without the people that I hadn't expected to help out at all. My roommate, my closest friends, my fellow Plexans, my friendship family, my wonderfully thoughtful friendship family, who Googled Diwali traditions and handed me the largest box of goodies that I've ever seen, so I could have a piece of tradition when I wasn't at home. Without their curiosity, their desire to help, I would have been left yet again on the floor of my room, lamenting the distance from my family. But they saved me. They loved me. So I said something that day, which I still hold to be true. I see all of you as my family, my home away from my home. Now I ask you again, am I your family? There's a reason why I'm asking this. When I ask you if I'm your family, I mean that the only way to heal the divides of xenophobia is to address the lack of understanding, which can be done if we ask questions. It can be done if we're curious. Rabindranath Tagore, an Indian poet who won the Nobel Prize for Literature, once said that you can't cross a sea merely by standing and staring at the water, which puts me in mind of a Hindi quote, "Boond boond se sagar banta hai." It means it takes mere drops of water to make a sea. So individual effort over time can bring about large-scale change. Each of us has to ask questions that move us past ignorance, because if we don't, then we'll stay separated on different sides of the ocean, isolated in our paranoia and hurt. That night in October, you cared enough to ask, and I felt the magic that night. But it wasn't just magic, it was the beauty of a liberal arts education, which encourages us to be curious, to challenge the world and come out of our shells. We have to be curious about individual cultural expressions, so that one day, when someone with a different skin color, different accent, and different mannerisms asks you, "Am I your family?" you want to say yes. Dhanyavad.
Anne-Marcel Kwame. Do wifenene yede kamonero yamon vugoboji. This is a proverb in my native language that says, when a stubborn child refuses to listen, he will learn his lesson only when it's too late. Nelson Mandela, former president of South Africa, activist and Nobel Peace Prize winner in 1993, once said, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to a man in his language, that goes to his heart. This is how I feel whenever I speak my native language, Guho, with my mother. Yes, if you know me, you know that I speak both French and English every day. But hearing someone speak to me in Guho means the world to me. I feel as though that person sees within me, acknowledges my ethnicity and my sense of self. Unfortunately, I recognize that not everyone has the privilege of sharing that same feeling. What's most shocking is that many of us don't even realize the depth within our own everyday language. If we are to heal divides, we must study language in order to see our interconnectedness, our shared past, and our common future. Our reluctance to acknowledge, understand, and respect the dynamics within our first language and the languages of others further divides us. Everyone in this room speaks with an accent, right? I do. And yet, we label some as bad or ghetto. We even label people who speak with a different accent as inarticulate and pressure them to speak articulately. What does that even mean? Have we ever stopped to think that those who speak English with a different accent than ours just might be fluent in other languages too? Have we ever stopped to consider that those whom we label as others, because they speak English differently, may speak another dialect? You see, a dialect carries a long and complex history of a people, making it part of their identity. Pamela Sorota-Corte, Director of International Education at Ronald College, argued that accent and dialects are all aspects of language that represent the richness of expressiveness of being. Language is the foundation of civilization. It's what makes us human. As a social justice advocate, we are fighting to recognize, appreciate, and become knowledgeable of the humanity of our global brethren, and to dismantle the systemic, oppressive hierarchy of languages, dialects, and accents. Juniata College must reaffirm its commitment to the study of languages as a step toward cultivating empathy and regaining our interconnectedness. You know, children have a thing or two to teach us about empathy. A recent study on the effect of bilingualism on the theory of mind development, published by Cambridge University Press, observed that young children being raised bilingually have to follow social cues to figure out which language to use with which person and in what setting. What does that tell us? Bilingualism allows children to understand words that are not being spoken, to identify with the stories beneath the cover. I also experienced this 4 years ago when I studied in China as a high school student. Learning this intricate Chinese character helped me gain an insight into the history of a country and how the people live and view the world around them. I learned that the ancient Chinese drew their characters to describe objects as they saw them in real life. And guess what? I also discovered that my native language and Mandarin use similar tones and exclamation. For instance, the Chinese say "ya" to express surprise. My people say "hai" or "he." The word "mi fan" meaning food or rice in Chinese. In Guho, we say "mi fon," which means banana or food. I never would have thought that my native language, which is one of 60 languages in my country, Cote d'Ivoire, and one of thousands in Africa, would be so similar to Chinese Mandarin, the most widely spoken languages in the world. How cool is that? While these similarities are coincidental, others stem from simply the fact that we share fundamental human capabilities and experiences that shape our culture. Our liberal arts institutional learning outcome states that Juniata College graduates will demonstrate engagement with the South and the world. How many of you know where the World Language Center is located? Now, how about the Humanities Building? Well, you might find it surprising, but they're one on the same building. Now, some of us here, including myself, live in the global village. But how many of us really engage in cultivating meaningful interaction with one another? It all starts within. The best way to discover our shared past is to take the initiative and seek these opportunities to genuinely interact with people who speak differently from us. Whether it's studying a foreign language in the country where they're spoken, or simply listening and understanding the dialects and accent of our neighbors. This step towards togetherness is not just about finding linguistic similarities or even achieving fluency in a foreign language, no. It's about exposing the self to the world. It's about learning the languages of cultures as a way to find our shared future. Ann Duncan, former U.S. Secretary of Education, once stated that to prosper economically and improve relations with other countries, Americans must read, speak, and understand other languages. Juniata College can and must play a role in guiding us towards an inclusive future. It is imperative that we, first, appreciate the dynamic nature of language. Second, reaffirm our institutional commitment to the study and teaching of language so that we can see our shared past and build an inclusive future. And third, take the initiative to interact with one another. According to the Modern Language Association, users of tongue other than the foreign language has the ability to construct linguistic and cultural identities to help deal with cross-cultural clashes as they encounter and as they migrate between languages. This right here is power. Multilingualism has the potential to heal. I believe that we, future leaders of the world, must be armed with various linguistic skills, perspective, along with the understanding that languages shape different truths and identities. That is the essence of global citizenship. That is the source of our humanity. Do wefenene ye de kamonero yaman vugoboji. This is my calling to return to the core of the liberal arts. We can no longer afford to be that stubborn child and learn the lesson when it's too late. The window of opportunity, it is now. So let us make language studies central to our education.
Xavier and Kishon. If someone told you to think about who you are, how would you respond? Would you think I'm a student at Juniata studying this or that POE? Would you think I'm part of a certain sports team or club on campus? Would you think I'm white or black, Christian or Muslim, Democrat or Republican? What would be the roles or the ideas you'd identify? We are here to answer how we can use the values of our liberal arts education to heal the deeply entrenched divides we currently find in our nation and world. Where to begin? Well, you may have thought I just proposed a hypothetical situation where someone told you to think about who you are. But actually, Juniata just adopted this as their new slogan. Although think about who you are may roll off the tongue nicely, it's often interpreted in a misguided way. Too bad it's so conveniently placed throughout our campus. It's misguided because our current way of responding to think about who you are guides us to thinking about what makes us different. We highlight things like our job titles, belief systems, and special abilities, all things to show that we're not the same. I argue this. When we focus on our differences to answer, think about who you are, we divide the world. We must find a better way to think about who we are. A true liberal arts education encourages us to engage in personal exploration and not just seek academic success. If we want to practice meaningful civic engagement, we must replace the current identity process, which fosters an illusion of difference, with a better one, which fosters a reality of interconnected similarity. If someone walked up to me on my first day at Juniata and told me to think about who you are, I would have almost certainly have thought cross-country runner. I came to Juniata for a few reasons, but one of the main ones was to be a runner. In high school, I was pretty good at it. I won some awards, stuff humans recognize other humans with. I wanted to be really good at Juniata. I wanted to go to nationals someday. I even made a little video of myself saying that and saved it on my computer. It might have been silly, but it was a real dream. However, after the end of my freshman year, I got injured pretty badly. My hip was full of tendinitis, and there's a muscle in my back that just can't seem to handle running for more than a mile at a time. Just to give some context, if Coach gave us a 6-mile run, that would be considered an easy day. I was devastated. I knew my running days were over. For a year or so, this major identity loss made me feel confused, upset, angry at why this would happen to me. Losing running was losing myself. However, and I couldn't be more happy or blessed for where I am right now. Although losing who I thought I was hurt, it could never compare to the joy I felt when I realized who I truly am. As Misha, a famous American dancer, once said, "The more injuries you get, the smarter you get." The loss of running, although painful in the moment, forced me to foster a new reality. A new reality I plan to share with you all in the next few minutes. Tying your identity to a role you play or to an ideology you hold will always give the illusion of difference between people. See, being a runner was an identity I held on to as tightly as a 2-ton metal vise, terrified of anyone who would attempt to loosen the grip. Back when I was stuck in the grip of the vise, I had a difficult time seeing people who didn't run or who didn't understand why I ran as similar to me. See, every day I would wake up knowing that an 8, 9, sometimes even 10-mile run was on my daily menu. Although I admit this behavior was slightly insane, it would make me very defensive and irritated when anyone tried to question why I did it. Their questioning would force me to become defensive and irritated because it would feel like they were questioning me, my whole being, and not just some behavior I engaged in. Now just imagine, just picture this. If I became so defensive and irritated simply because of someone who didn't understand why I ran, think about why our society has become so reactive, so defensive when ideologies derived from race, politics, and religion are brought into the mix. When we tie ideologies to our identities, we become polarized. Barack Obama explained this perfectly when he said, "There's not a liberal America and a conservative America. There's just the United States of America." So in order to heal the divides in our nation and world, we must find a better way to think about who we are. As I mentioned earlier, even though losing the ability to run left me feeling confused, upset, angry, there was a positive side to this identity loss. See, losing running forced me, whether I enjoyed it at the time or not, to thoughtfully reconsider who I thought I was. This thoughtful process led me to reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, a guide to spiritual enlightenment. Eckhart Tolle's ideas are not new. He extracts fundamental Christian and Buddhist values which have been in existence for over 2,000 years and uses them as the foundations for his teachings. Teachings that attempt to transcend people from the illusion of difference to the reality of interconnected similarity. Tolle's central teaching that helped me foster a new reality is this: defining yourself through thought is limiting yourself. In other words, when we think about who we are, we tend to use our thoughts to locate the roles we play in the ideologies we hold. These thoughts create identities, but those identities do not encapsulate the true essence of who we are. They are limiting. They are merely the tip of the iceberg. Being a student at Juniata, or a professor or custodian or an alum, or being a runner or a dancer or a baseball player are roles we play. And being a Democrat or a Republican, a Christian or a Muslim, or whatever your understanding of race and gender may be, are ideologies we hold, and they shouldn't define us. None of these thoughts are you. We are more the same than we are different. On the deepest level of humanity, deep underneath the tip of the iceberg, we, all humans, are interconnected and loving beings. Tolle argues, if the structures of the human mind remain unchanged, we will always end up recreating the same world, the same evils, the same dysfunction. The current way we think about who we are is dysfunctional because it fosters the illusion of difference. We cannot possibly heal the divides in our nation and world if we fundamentally perpetuate this illusion. The better way to think about who we are is to think about who we are and think again. Because no matter what your initial thoughts may say you are, they will always just be the tip of the iceberg. I was never just a runner. I just thought I was. At the deepest level, I'm the same as you. We are loving, interconnected humans who derive our sense of purpose not from being different, but from being the same. Tonight, I invite you all to transcend the illusion of difference and to seek a new reality of interconnected similarity. In the Bible, Mark 12:31 pleads, "Love your neighbor as you love yourself. There is no commandment greater than this."
Maeve Gannon. Students and staff, judges, friends, family, comrades, partners, peers, and professors. Thank you for bringing yourselves, your stories, your hopes, and your ideas into this room tonight. Whether you are here to listen, here to speak, have spoken, have listened, you activated this space in some way. This moment is charged. We have come together this evening to ask, how do we heal divides? Are we ready to heal divides? At the very least, how do we build bridges? How do we better align ourselves with the people most affected by our recent election? There is no perfect way to combat the current division in our country. There is no single answer. But our liberal arts education is a good place to start. This room and this activated space is a good place to start. Why? Because we have thinkers. We have speakers and we have listeners. We have artists and we have scientists. We have world travelers and historians. We have political scientists and mathematicians. Liberal arts colleges are places that produce people with a willingness to explore and engage. Frederick Douglass famously argues that without a struggle, there can be no progress. The liberal arts here at Juniata teach us that friction is a part of growth. We cherish intellect, but we know that intellect is not enough. Bell Hooks famously asserts that the moment we choose to love, we begin to move towards freedom, to act in ways that liberate ourselves and others. Together, we must lean into a discomforting struggle with sincerity, with compassion, and with love. What does love and leaning in look like? It will look different depending on who you are and where you are in life. When I was 5 years old, I used to write comics and op-eds about our president and our politicians. I would play outside with sticks, mud, and leaves, and I would stage coups or plot operations to overthrow the US government. As some of you may know, this vaguely radical streak has followed me into young adulthood. I have been attending sit-ins, walkouts, protests, marches, and strikes since I was in middle school. When I was in high school, I would regularly skip school in order to protest in the streets. The people united will never be defeated. I am used to rabble-rousing. But in college, and in this town, and in this political environment, it has been very challenging for me to reconcile my thirst for education and knowledge, my role as student, with my thirst for action, mobilization, and protest, my role as agitator. Even to this day, I am known to skip class, drive across the state, and attend various actions, meetings, or events related to our current political and social climate. Recently, in recent months, I have finally learned that these two things, student and agitator, are not mutually exclusive. My education informs my actions, and my actions inform my education. My liberal arts courses drive me to engage. And I believe that this stems from our principles here at Juniata, principles that say we recognize the value of being a citizen of the world in an increasingly global and diverse community, that we believe in the spirit of sustainability, that we seek to give back to humanity, and that we know learning is a lifelong process encompassing many disciplines. When I was in the midst of writing a paper about hijabi Muslim women last year, I ended up having an experience that really brought my paper and my research to life. I was walking to a friend's house late one night in Huntingdon alone. And as I walked, a truck drove up next to the sidewalk and began to follow slowly along behind me, revving their engine. I started walking quickly until I reached the end of the block, but the truck kept pace with me. And as I braced myself for the regular catcalls or whistling, the three men in the car swerved past, shouting, "Go home, bitch." One of them leaned out the car window and spat across my face. As a woman, I am familiar with various forms of harassment. But it took me a second to realize that this particular treatment was due to the fact that I had been cold, and I had taken a colorful scarf and wrapped it around my head and my shoulders. I am not a Muslim woman, but in this society, women with headscarves are regularly the targets of hate crimes. In fact, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, anti-Muslim hate groups have tripled between 2015 and 2016 over the course of our presidential campaign. Racism, prejudice, and bigotry have become normalized by our politicians, particularly by the man who is now the face of our country. These are the divides that we seek to heal in our nation and in our communities. What do we do with these incidents that divide us? We lean in. We have to address these moments of tangled ignorance. We have to take risks to fight systems, laws, or ways of thinking that threaten our humanity. My 5-year-old self was ready to overthrow an unjust government by writing op-eds, writing comics, and/or by staging a coup. My middle school self and my high school self thought that one of the only ways to challenge our government or challenge injustice was to protest in the streets. But what college has sparked in me is the understanding that we will evolve into a just and true world. We will build bridges when we lean in to difference. We can maximize change when we support the various tactics, skills, or solutions that each person has to offer. Which is why, with admiration, I want to acknowledge the importance of all of our speakers and all of our listeners leaning in tonight. Bayard Rustin once said, "We need in every community a group of angelic troublemakers." Let us all, with the tools of the liberal arts, be those troublemakers. So if you haven't been engaged in resistance, in movement building, or social justice before this critical point in history, I welcome you now with warmth and with open arms. People on the margins of society have been fighting. Lean in, because we need you. We have always needed you, and we need you more than ever. I love you, and I have been waiting. So welcome.
Okay, let's do it again because they were just utterly amazing. Are they not the greatest? Thank you for being such a great audience and helping our speakers be the best they can be. The judges are going to deliberate, and they're going to come back as soon as possible, so please don't leave. Wait to find out what happens. Please enjoy some refreshments sponsored by the Communication and Media Club. And now John Gage would like to talk to you about the Popular Choice Award.
Hello. It's so great to be here again, a second time. This is only my second year here. But it's even better coming here the second time. It just seems like it gets better and better each year. And I wanted to let you know that you can get involved in conversation with this. You can do it on Twitter. You can get involved. It's hashtag Bailey 2017. Just get involved. I'm sure you all have a lot to say, a lot of opinions about all of the speeches that were made today. Another way you can get involved is we're having our third annual Bailey Talkback, which is we will be discussing in conversation about the speeches. It's going to be tomorrow in BAC C116 at 12 p.m. We will be discussing the speeches. Everyone is welcome to come, faculty, students, judges, especially the speakers. It's in BAC C116 at 12 p.m. tomorrow. We will be announcing we will be doing our People's Choice Award, which is where you guys decide who you thought was the best speaker. You can do this by texting your favorite speaker. I think the codes are on the TV. Are they on the TV now? Yeah, so just text to the number on there with the code of your favorite speaker. And also tonight, you have a chance to be a winner. You might if you look under your chairs, you'll notice some Post-its. There might be a Post-it, there might not be. If it has the word winner on it, we'll have 3 winners. If it has the word winner on it, then come up and see me. Yeah, sorry, it was only under the chairs up there. If it has the word winner on it, come on up here. Do we have winners? Come on up here. If your Post-it says winner on it, come up here. Thank you.
Talking to the mic. Talking to the mic.
Maybe they're just decorating.
Find so many people.
We have one more winner who has yet to claim their prize.
How are you? Good.
Is this mic still on? I thought on was great. Oh.
Do you know how to track it?
No, I don't.
Do you think I set it up?
No. No, I'm not sure. I'm assuming you know? Where's
Do you
Bill?
have to announce it?
Yeah.
So know who's going to tell you?
No, I don't. I thought it might be gone up. You know, just doing that.
It's not Joe.
All right. I mean, whoever set up the TV, I'm assuming they. I mean, I could ask because I know Kyle set up the TV.
Yeah, because I just realized, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I'll go ask him. Going well.
You just have me in a like face. Like, you know,
Do you want me to see if I can hack into it? I mean, I think if I'm not... If I'm not wrong, that site looks like I can call it and figure out what it is. I don't know if that's... Worst comes to worst, I can always see if that's the case. They're taking care of it.
Donna's gonna tell me.
Problem resolved. Now, what happens if the person that wins People's Choice also wins? Do they get both?
I guess so.
Or do they get, or just first, second, third get disqualified?
I think People's Choice gets announced first. Joey.
Listen, I was just happy that there was food and left out there. That was my responsibility. I was freaking out all the time.
Oh, are they waving this telling us to go, or are they just hand signaling? Are they just hand signaling across the hall? They're not looking at us, so I'm assuming they're just waving at those people.
Yeah, I don't know what we know, but I bring it really in because it is almost like the key. It is to get out of here.
Should I start rounding people back in?
Let's ask Joey first.
And would you do me a favor?
Yes.
I need to leave to go run a meeting, but can you tell me who wins and who wins People's Choice?
Yeah. Like immediately after?
Yes, please.
Like, do I have your number? I think I probably.
I mean, if you don't have my number, you definitely have me on Facebook.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is close enough. Because I'm supposed to be covering it for work, and I was supposed to stay long enough, and I tried to prolong my meeting.
Okay, I will text you immediately. I'll text you first, second, third, People's Choice.
Alright, yeah, that's perfect.
And I might know a little bit beforehand, so don't spoil it.
Who am I gonna tell?
Oh yeah, that's true. You'll tell all the people at your work, right?
your attention, please. We are at that moment. And I'm going to start with something incredibly mundane. We have somebody who has a door prize and they didn't pick it up. And I was asked to mention that. Thank you for being so patient and waiting. It was incredibly difficult. And all of the speakers should be aware of how much our judges struggled. We are going to begin with the People's Choice Award, and it will be announced by John Gage of the Communication and Media Club.
All right, you've all cast your votes, and the People's Choice winner is Anha.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't get nervous all that often. My watch, my Apple Watch, if I were to do my heart rate right now, you probably don't want to know. Jennifer, do you want to know? Oh my gosh. Okay. I won't tell you the number that's on my watch. Thank you, students. Blessed is the word that comes to mind to hear you, to feel you, to believe you and your words and what you have shared with us tonight. I'm not left speechless often, but I am. For those who know me, who speak a lot, I am often not left speechless. I am right now. It never ceases to amaze me, the inspiration that comes from our students here at Juniata. They change our lives every single day. I know the faculty are so blessed to see it every single day in their classrooms. I get a chance to see it occasionally when I interact with students on the quad, in the dining hall, at their events. I just wish I could see it and feel it every single day like I did tonight. Thank you. So, with that said, the Baileys live on, Dr. Weimer, and another night of unforgettableness. And thank you, judges, for your work. Tough job. I will start at number 3 and work toward our winner. Number 3, coming in third place, is Xavier Cachon. In second place, Nitya Chakri. And the 2017 Bailey is on. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Be safe on your trip home. Enjoy the rest of your evening. See you next year.